there, Lorraine Van Tool here from the Sacred Healing Well, and I am here with Valerie Vargas, who is my teacher assistant. She is also a special ed teacher and super talented, and we're going to just riff a little bit on some things we've been observing, and there's so much happening in the world, so much transformational turbulence, and a lot of people, what we've observed, who get a bit lost in the process, and I can totally relate. I just came out of a workshopping session. I've been working on my book, and with the help of my mentor, also got to see that I can get lost so much in the process, and wanted to title my book Heal, Love, Lead with Soul Authority. And while that is I still think an awesome title for a program, it's probably not the best title for a book, and to let readers know what the end result is, the goal that we're trying to achieve, or I'm trying to achieve with the book. So the new title is Freedom from Oppression, and I am hoping to empower readers into knowing their worth, speaking their clarity, and also how to transform resistance to change within themselves, at home and at work. So very results oriented. And we were just laughing about this, Valerie too, observing, so often we're, like going on a road trip, like the whole idea of life being a journey, that all being true, but having at some point no idea where we're going, just completely lost in the journey, focus on the wounding, rearranging things, and also a bit, I think, oppressed by what we think as is the low bar in society, in so many spaces where there is no higher purpose. And if we just achieve a certain level of stability or crisis reduction, harm reduction, we're happy. So we're here to raise the bar on that, and I'm going to let Valerie share a little bit what she's observed in regards to that.
Absolutely. Well, as you were talking, I was just reminded of this conversation I was having with my friend, where both of us, she and I struggle with mental health occasionally, and we'll kind of confide in each other and talk about it. And we come to the conclusion that sometimes we feel broken, but then we look at these pictures of, police brutality, for example, and how accepted these things are in society. And then we come to the conclusion that we can't possibly be the broken ones. If they can do that and that's acceptable, then we can't possibly be broken, because we follow our heart and we work from a place of like compassion and love. And so it's kind of difficult to sit in a society where all the evidence says that we're wrong, but then I look and I see and I trust my senses, and I'm far enough to trust my intuition and feel validated, and I see that absolutely I'm not the broken one. There are so many things in the society, but it's so hard to kind of navigate through it when you're punished for trying to be whole and trying to follow what you think is the correct direction. And I know so many people who advocate, oh, I want to help people with depression, I want to make a difference, and yet people avoid the messy pain and the chaos that sometimes comes along with true healing. And sometimes I see and I feel kind of society sweeping away the ugly parts, but it goes back to these paradoxes we always talk about, where you need that is part of it. And I kind of feel like in my healing, the greatest understanding is the bad stuff isn't bad. All those horrible feelings or it's just all part of the process, and you got to kind of keep your stay grounded, stay focused at your highest goal, and work through it.
Mm-hmm. And as I'm listening to you, I'm really appreciating what a highly sensitive soul like you is confronted with, and that is just the complexity, not just the messiness, but the complexity and the tendency to blame ourselves, because it is just so much, all of this oppression and all of these layers, and it's been around for so long that it's hard for us to sort of, be this fish out of the fishbowl and look back in and detect, what exactly is happening. So it gets really confusing. And it is about boundaries. And as we talked about before, it's almost like our bodies, we don't even know where we begin and end. So it's not even a fishbowl. We're kind of like in an ocean, and there are all of these streams coming in, and we don't even realize that we can discern these streams. So if we get to a place of clarity, even where you have greater understanding, it's not my fault, and I'm going to externalize that blame, I think that could alleviate a lot of crises and give you a bit of a relief. But this is also kind of where I feel we can raise the bar a lot more. And this is this higher purpose that people tend to neglect or not work on, where you really need to learn how to energetically even not even set the boundaries only, but transform, kind of what you're talking about, how to transform that ugly painfulness and compost it and make something really useful and powerful with it.
I'm so glad you said that, because you were the first person to ever sort of validate how I felt wasn't good, because I was trying to do what everyone wanted me to do. And it felt very confusing, because I felt like, okay, this makes sense and this doesn't make sense. And it's hard being a highly sensitive person in this world where no one lays out the rules. No one lays out the truth. There's rules of society, and then there's punishment from people, and there's rejection if you don't follow that. And I think you and the community that I now belong to, it's just validating to know that there are different streams. There's a name to it. There's a label to it. It's correct. And yes, it's difficult, but for me, it's not so difficult anymore, because I kind of have a clear understanding of like, oh, I feel this pain because, not to be cliche, because society conditioned me to feel that way, right? And so it is a great feeling to break from that oppression, to at least understand that I can heal from pain that was, put onto me or that I navigate through these obstacles in society, and I'm feeling maybe frustrated and upset, and I'm valid in those feelings because that's not correct, right? And so I think you talked about these streams, and that resonates with me, because there are all these complex layers and nuances that no one ever told me about. And as soon as that was brought to my awareness, that kind of gave me the confidence to follow my inner compass, my true north.
Yeah. And I think, one of the biggest challenges we're having, is you and I and so many highly sensitive people I work with, is to remain concrete. Even here, I'm like thinking, how could we put this in more concrete terms? So if we think of, sort of this true north, us being maybe thinking even of our bodies as the car, because we're so not used to, taking full ownership of this body that we need to take care of and that we live in, as you said. So we need to know where we're going. The journey is important, but it is this paradoxical thing. And knowing what is happening with your car, knowing that it's not just the milestones or looking around you, what's happening around you, that's important, but also what's under the hood. Are your tires aligned? And also, I love the idea of, you saying you just got a stud finder. So many forces and things are like invisible, and this freedom from oppression and having more skills and knowing how to work with it, really what that does is gives you so much more mastery in navigating through the world, not going on major detours. And most of all, what it's going to do is benefit health, I believe, because there's so much overwork, self-blame, and that resulting in relational issues and conflicts, things that we're not even fully connecting, where we're not even, connecting the dots that how that is important, or the result of this internalized oppression. So I'll let you speak to that a bit.
I mean, absolutely. You said a lot that sits with me. And I'm reminded when I teach how these kids will understand that they're being treated unfairly. They won't have the words and they won't know why. there's just a feeling, this is not fair. And they'll often retaliate in these negative ways, but they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And so they're labeled as these like bad kids. And so, you know, they continue on through school, and I can predict what's going to happen to them because I was that kid. You know, they go on thinking that they're just this bad person and they don't fit in society. And, you know, honestly, maybe they don't, because I didn't fit in society. I think I was a rebel born that way. But I don't think that's wrong. I think we need these people who are following their heart, who do something and they get in trouble, and even though it wasn't exactly the thing they needed to do or should have done, they're standing up for their feelings. And to me, that's very powerful. This idea with, the car, and, you know, I like to think, continuing this metaphor that we're kind of these souls in this body, or this person in this car, because we're driving this body, right? When I work with kids, I like to maybe say that I'm the mechanic, and I'm like trying to point out these areas. And when I name it, that's what you did for me. They kind of bring awareness to it, understand it more, and are able to kind of maybe adjust. You know, as a mechanic, maybe they're tightening some things and doing things here, and they still have the feelings, but they channel it in different ways. And it makes a difference to kind of understand those streams, like you were talking about, where it helps to understand that this is the engine, this is the I don't know cars, but these are the certain parts, right? Yeah. So as a teacher, I like to kind of tell people, okay, we got to check under the hood. Oh, look at this is loose over here. Okay, we got to attend to that. And it really does relate to the health, because kids will sleep in class. My friend is going through this. She's going through this. It's very difficult times right now, and she's texting me about how her health is declining. And so we've been having this conversation about, hey, how are you feeling? And she goes, well, that's down too. And so I think it's very important to kind of look at the inner workings of things. And it's difficult when you've not been taught what those inner workings are, and you've not been given the tools to do it. So it's like, hey, take this broken car, society's banging it up. Okay, go do your goals, be successful. You don't know what a wrench is. You don't know what an engine looks like. And so, yeah. It's just,
yeah, I love that. I love it. It sparked so much insight, going back to the whole idea of you claiming that you were born as a rebel. I'm starting my book actually speaking to the natural born leaders, and how many of us, you know, just like you described these kids, we don't identify even as, you know, such. We think we're the troublemakers. And in our journey of freeing ourselves from that oppression, from those labels, we actually we stand more into in our authority and become these leaders that we're meant to be. So raising the bar, and why it is so important to the world, to all of us, to understand what the end goal is, this higher purpose is. If you now think of these kids, right, having these tools now, instead of wasting your day and your time and your brilliance, because many of them are brilliant figuring this out all day long, like moving parts around, and that just, you know, sort of like moving the furniture, but not making any dramatic changes or qualitative changes. If you did that, or did not have to do that day in, day out, how much you could contribute to the world. And it's scary for many to think like, I'm not the leader, I'm the troublemaker. You know, the idea of leader for me was like, I'm not this white CEO that's eloquent. I mean, I was selectively mute. I dealt with censorship. I had panic attacks and cried speaking about myself. So it came a long way in terms of freeing myself from that. And what happens next is when you actually transform that, understand that it's that whole journey that helps you become that leader, because you now have the expertise and can guide others, you know, who endured the same thing. So it is sort of this soul work and soul retrieval work, where you might feel like, I finally got it all in order, all the puzzle pieces are in place, why would I go back? You know, I have this skill. But this is initiation frustration, where people are really attached to now finally having landed, but there's still a lot of duality actually in terms of success and failure, and we have to sort of mess it all up again to get now to a higher level of being and of our identity and what we are to do, and continue in this dynamic wholeness where there's no, static anything like an end goal, but there is a higher goal that we're achieving, and we're working through it in the whole process of things, all parts moving and all parts integrating. So that is where I see a lot of people stuck sort of like in this dark night of the soul, and not wanting to shake things up to take it further across the board, in therapy, in school, in politics, in workspaces, homes. What's your feel on that?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I can relate to this when we were talking earlier. So, and I think it's also important to kind of point out that you didn't say go be a leader and you'll tend to yourself. No, you said you focus on your inner self, and then the leading, you have that foundation to then step into those. I mean, we're natural born leaders, but I mentioned this discernment because for me, I was like, okay, I'm out of this, hardship. I've got this savings account going. I've got this apartment. I'm good. And then I'm feeling overwhelmed internally, and I'm doing this like, no, shove it down. You're good. You're happy. It turns out, I needed to check under the hood, because I wasn't able to step into my leadership roles because I really needed to kind of ground and listen to the loose parts inside. And then I found out that I'm actually not satisfied with this current trajectory. And I think that is actually an amazing realization that I wish I had just grounded and confronted from the beginning, because it means that when I was a child, all I wanted was like stability and this apartment and a savings account, and not to feel like I was drowning all the time. I'm there, and I'm now want to raise that bar that you were talking about. Mm. And I think it's amazing that I've built this capacity to want more and to strive to be able to do more. And it all started with kind of lifting up the hood and going inward, even just recently, because I was feeling uncomfortable and I was feeling stuck. And the conclusion I came to was that I want to continue this growth, and I need to continue this growth, and I need to continue raising that bar even more, because I also don't think I realized how oppressive everything has been, because I do have a lot of privilege. I've been through hardship, but I think, not only as a woman and coming from like a multi-ethnic background and like all of this stuff, it's in my blind spot constantly. And then being born a highly sensitive rebel, I have more blind spots because I have this different understanding of how things should navigate and what should be prioritized. And so I think I totally understand what you're saying, raising that bar, kind of elevating everything to continuing to a higher level, and just speaking to the fact that groundwork that I've done has completely like surpassed the initial goals that I've been striving to get. I keep checking off boxes. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll keep going. So yeah.
That's wonderful. That's so great. And what I was thinking too, as you were talking, why it's sometimes hard for us to raise that bar or look at these higher purpose goals. Just happened last week with one of my clients. It is because some of this higher achievements, the domain and what, been occupied by the white people, right? And my understanding too of leader is the white CEO, or there's the white celebrity who's articulate this and that. So there is often this inner conflict where, in the past, there were maybe even wishes. I wish I were white because then I could do this, and then going back to identifying with who you are. And it also reminds me of a client I once worked with where I was teaching her breathing exercises, and her father was very oppressive and always made her sort of do these mindfulness exercises and breathing exercises. So she had associated all of that with breathing and wasn't able to make it her own, or separate this from the oppressive forces of her father. So I had to remind her, you do breathe all the time. Your breathing is yours. You can make it your own. So we need to, extract all of that back. And many of the things that we associate with success, it's been colored over by, people who don't look like us. And so it's hard for us to look in the mirror and say, this is still my blind spot. I'm not as great of a speaker. I'm not as this and that, and not take that as self-blame, but do that with discernment. Also not take it in terms of, how we have been looked upon as inferior or whatever, being of color or a woman. And I believe that the fear of looking in the mirror in that way, is also a form of oppression, because we can look at it and separate that from the conditioned responses and discern and say, here is where I want to raise the bar for myself. I'm going to be the speaker on my own terms. I'm going to do it on my own terms. I'm going to occupy that space. And this is what I call the transformation trailblazers, because you're these natural healers, and through your own transformation, you're going to trailblaze a brand new path and show others how they can do that. So it sounds like you can relate.
I mean, okay, so you mentioned success, and even that right there is, in society right now, to me, it feels oppressive, because success to a lot of people, so I was having this conversation with this person who was struggling with a situation with their child, and he just kept talking about how he wouldn't care if he smoked all day as long as he had a job. And I'm like, so you're mad that he's, smoking all day, but if he was making money, that would be okay? And so kind of this idea, for me, I would be like, I wonder what's going on internally for this person. That's important. The money, you got to have a balance in life. You got to strive. You mentioned discernment in success. And I think so often I talk to people about, follow your heart, take that leap. And people are like, I can't, quit this job. And people are fearful of losing success. And I think that is money and what people label as success. But I don't think that's actually in necessarily the only thing. I think that's one component. And I think even breaking that concept that success, that money and your family and whatever people label as success is only one small piece. And to embody that idea and to move forward with that idea is rebellion, and is breaking that oppressive mold that society is pushing. And I think that is one clear one for me that is so often in my blind spot, because, society paints this picture that you will fail. If you continue following your heart, you will be rejected. There's consequences. And honestly, some people who are following their heart are getting arrested, and they're not breaking the law. So it is very difficult to be a rebel. It is very difficult to break through these barriers. And yeah, so what you're saying is very relevant.
And I'm listening to you as, a soul healer and a psychologist, and I'm thinking also the biggest, most tragic loss that is in our blind spot completely, is our well-being and our mental health, and not even understanding like all these ways in which we've been compartmentalized, and these ruptures have happened, and we have not over the generations been able to even mend them. What has happened, whether we blame ourselves or just, sort of take it as this is as good as it gets, it does take away, I believe, from our power and our soul authority. Because, in my practice, where we have, whether I was fully aware of it or not, been mending all of these different things, and for people to discover that they have this inner healer, this inner shaman, that they can mend their physical ailments. So many physical ailments are the result of these ruptures, and in the world outside of themselves, nobody acknowledges that very much. It's like, oh, it's probably a disposition, genetic, take a pill, do this, do that. There's not much you can do about it. And so you're kind of in this helpless, powerless state. And really learn to shut down more and more of your own energy, your own feelings, your own biggest wisdom. And that to me is the most tragic loss, because you can just shut this down and then think, oh, I'm gonna then open my creative self and I'm gonna be this great powerful being and do other things, right, that are associated with success. That's why you kind of have these people who, you know, smoke this and then do that, and, you know, are successful but then are about to have a divorce, and all kinds of things that don't seem interrelated, but at the core and the heart is a disconnection from your own energy and all that entails, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So, you know, that is what I see as the most tragic part, not able to claim.
And I think it's very tragic because we've talked about this earlier, where people don't want to pay attention to things that are invisible, and it's getting even worse because let me backtrack. So if you're feeling a certain way, so if this parent had this child who was smoking, there's an internal something that's happening, but that parent wanted to focus on the physical money, right? So people are in society are really conditioned to trust what they see, because when they trust what they feel, they're punished. But it goes even further than that, where people start shutting down even that. I don't know if you know, but in the news, people are saying that George Floyd's death was staged, but you can see the video. So now people don't even trust their eyes. There's this punishment still for believing that, right? So I think to me that shows how wounded people are. And what's even more telling is these people who are saying that are angry. They're still feeling something, and instead of kind of trusting those feelings and looking inward and investigating, they're just, you know, going with society. And so it speaks to like how fearful they even are of being rejected and punished by society. And it just that is tragic, that the loss of trusting your inner self.
Yeah, and it makes me think of, you know, sort of, some people think it's harsh, but I don't think so. I feel like there's a lot of mainstream or collective, large, widespread gaslighting, and now what you're seeing is a lot of different political agendas. Some are, you know, really with malicious intent to confuse people even more, take advantage of people who are not grounded. And so, you know, to even go back, that's what I call sort of the renaturing from the bottom up, instead of often attempting to rewire yourself from the top down. We can really get stuck in this maze and entanglement of our own, you know, brain and wires. So starting from the bottom up and learning to trust ourselves again, and trusting this energy. And I liked what you also said, the whole idea of focus on money, that has come up in many of my other in my other groups as well, this productivity, and this sort of rat race that we're in, even though, you know, it's the racism and this hierarchy in the US is not stated as outright as it is in some other countries and cultures, where you're, you know, born and your birthright makes you more superior than another group or caste or class. What happens here is like we're scrambling so much, even if we're in the top, even if we're a first world country, in terms of our survival and trying to fill this emptiness and sense of scarcity, that we don't understand the racist classes, other kinds of isms, you know, and oppressive kind of ripple effects of that, because we're always thinking, you know, somebody else is about to drag us down and we need to do all we can to stay on top. And so here, you know, is this whole ripple effect where you're not seeing the people way below you have so many more hurdles and obstacles and are doing the same thing, and they're just nowhere ever going to get to where you want to go, but you're only seeing, oh my gosh, I'm still 10 rungs away from security and never going to make it, and there's always somebody ahead. So it's just kind of a really warped kind of gaslit thing, I think, where society or capitalism, and I don't think it's just capitalism, but a lot of manipulation happens, you know, almost like in the Matrix, where we're just these batteries and going and buying things and doing things and producing and making money for companies and others, and, you know, not stopping and thinking, who are we? What is it that we really want? How can we, we're trying to achieve happiness, really, well-being, money, all these things, success, status. They're just to get us to this place of, I think, well-being. I want to say to everybody, you can get there much quicker and much more directly.
Well, there's a story, I really wish I remembered the story better, but have you heard of the one of there's a fisherman in his boat, he's enjoying his life, and some guy comes and goes, oh my gosh, I want that life. So he works really, really hard for retirement and retires and does it. And the guy goes, well, I just didn't need any money. I just started, fishing. I didn't need to do all that to achieve this.
Oh, I didn't hear about the story, but that's a great story. But yeah, this is how we lose sight of the higher purpose.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
Exactly.
Where are we going? Where are we going?
Though, because society, like if you just decided that you wanted to sit in a boat all day, society would label you as lazy, get a job, so it's very hard to navigate today.
And it's set up that way that we can't in this society, even in other places now around the world. You're not going to get away with just sitting in a boat, because you're going to get fish with mercury in them. You know what I mean? It's just
it's a mess.
Yeah. So yeah, we have our work cut out for us, but hopefully you're all able to make some sense out of our riffing and maybe a bit of a convoluted attempt to tackle today's world problems.
Oh, and if we're laughing, and this is that goes to show you like we have this understanding, and society needs work, but bad isn't bad. It's just, it is what it is, and we work through it. And yeah.
Well, I so appreciate Valerie. Valerie and I do not lose sight of the big picture and have fun, whatever we do. So we invite you all, check out what, we have to offer in this upcoming book and programs throughout the year. So hope this was useful, and keep on freeing yourself from that internalized and external oppression. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.